All right, welcome to the Cyber Incision live stream. This is the Cutting into Cybersecurity podcast, also live stream here on LinkedIn, Twitch, and not Twitter, YouTube.
Twitch.
Go ahead.
Twitch.
Twitch, yep, Twitch.
Yep.
Did you know Twitter uses Periscope? I heard they're getting rid of it. I don't know. I've never used it. Have you ever even looked at Periscope?
Yeah.
Oh.
If you're in social media, way back in the day, you knew about Periscope. Didn't come much of it.
We did MySpace back in the day. I don't know what.
But it didn't launch much. Like it didn't really kind of take off.
Okay. All right. And it's amazing that how many users are on Twitter, but Periscope didn't take off, right? So awesome. So if you don't know us, you probably do. And you're here. Sean Delane is on, giving us some claps. Welcome. My name is Joel Bork. This is Brandon Krieger. He is a senior cybersecurity account executive over at Uzado. Thanks for co-hosting with me today again, Brandon.
Yeah, oh, you're welcome, man. This is pretty awesome. I mean, we're on episode 18.
Oh, yeah. They said most live streams make it to like 8 episodes, so we're actually doing it.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Awesome. Well, do you want to kick us off on last week's quick recap real fast? I'll tee up.
Let me pull up the show notes here. We learned a lot. Like, let's see who's watching so far. We've got
throw some claps up. If you guys are watching, clap, thumbs up, something. Show us you're here. I know it's
Sean's out here
Thursday
today.
Holiday season. Vivek said he's in Austin, so he always gets the time change wrong. So I should hit him up real quick. But he's looking at taking the CISSP here real soon, so he better be on.
So last week, and then I hope you guys are all enjoying this and learning a lot. Last week we did key management, key distribution, Diffie-Hellman key exchange, and then we went into wrapping up the session with the key escrow, fair crypto systems, and the encryption lifecycle. So a lot of it with encryption, and I mean, conversation I've been having more and more is about the quantum computer out in China and how they're going to crack that encryption, how they're going to crack any encryption in 2021.
Yeah.
Have you been hearing that?
So you have to think about who now. Enemies in cyberspace are a little different than enemies in like physical warfare, right? So if we're talking tanks and planes, yes, they're not our allies, but we're also not at war. Cyberspace is a different issue. You look at the SolarWinds breach, you look at the things occurring in cyberspace right now, like if that was an act of war, which it is an act of cyber war, then China and Russia and Iran are our enemies, present day.
Right.
So if you think they have a quantum computer and they're not going to try to use it to harm their enemies, you are very mistaken.
Right.
Absolutely. So quantum computers? I mean, our government's got to have that on their horizons as well.
I'm sure it's back in the scenes, like you're hearing kind of a lot of work being done to plan, look at different strategies. I know one of the teams that I'm working with right now are looking at the next level of encryption, right? So it's going to be coming out soon that probably in the first quarter, second quarter, you're going to see new levels of encryption to defend against, these types of attack. Because we all know this. Once you get kind of some implementation of security, then all of a sudden there's a new threat that comes out, right? New attack vector, and then it just keeps going back and forth. It's ping pong.
Yep. Well, right? we get to cover some of that today, so don't get too far into it. All right.
But anyway, so what I was talking about.
So Sean, Brandon, those of you who are on, we're going to do a quick question round. As soon as the first person answers it in the chat, I'm going to show the answer. Deal?
Deal.
Let's kick this puppy off. Hopefully I got audio in each of these. Here we go. Question number 1. Which of the following is not a factor related to access control? A, integrity. B, authenticity. C, confidentiality. Or D, availability.
Which of the following is not a factor related to access control? Interesting. So what do we got here? What does Sean think?
Here we go. Sean, we're waiting for you. A, B, C, or D? Hit us, buddy. Which is not a factor related to access control? I need all right, availability. Let's see if he's right. Here we go.
I'm going to go with B.
The correct answer is B. So it's going to be authenticity is not a factor related to access control.
Right, because it's all this. You got the CIA there, right there. Confidentiality, data integrity, and availability, right?
Yeah, so it's authenticity. Authenticity is different from availability, right? Similar, they threw in the two A words to throw you off because one of them was the answer. But yeah, so integrity is the factor related to access control. Absolutely, right? Christine is on. Welcome, Christine. Christine got it right. And then C, confidentiality, absolutely a factor related to access control and then availability. So your CIA triad. All right, number 2, here we go. Which of the following is needed for system accountability? A, audit mechanisms. B, documented design as laid out in the common criteria. C, authorization. Or D, formal verification of system designs.
There's a key here too to catch you up, right, in the wording. Which of the following is needed for systems accountability? So what do you need to have accountability? Think in that way.
All right, here we go. Waiting for you guys to pick your answer. Which of the following is needed for system accountability?
So elimination, right? Let's eliminate some. So formal verification of systems design, authorization. So system accountability authorization. No, it's not a form of accountability, right? B, documents design as laid out in the common criteria. Well, how is that giving you accountability? So we've got Christina saying A.
Boom, Christine, you are correct. Audit mechanisms is the correct answer. So if we look at our little explanation here, let me see if I can get it all on this page. Well, this is what I can get on the page for you. So accountability is the ability to identify users and track user actions. Through the use of audit logs and other tools, the user actions are recorded and can be used at a later date to verify what actions were performed. Well done. Clap it up for Christine. Very, very well done. Let's get on to question 3 real quick. All right. A deviation from an organization-wide security policy requires which of the following? A, risk acceptance. B, risk assignment. C, risk reduction. Or D, risk containment. Brandon, kick it off. Try to eliminate these for me.
So let's kind of work them down. So a deviation from an organization's wide security policy requires which of the following? So deviation. All right, you got to look at these words. Deviation from an organization-wide security. So what's going to throw that off? Is it risk assignment, risk reduction? So deviation, risk reduction, it's not really going to be a deviation. Risk containment, that's not a deviation. So you're looking at risk assignment and risk acceptance. So I'm going to say probably you're going to go with A or B, right? And I would go with A. So let's see what everyone else says.
I don't even have to. Well done. Risk acceptance. I actually, when I was looking through these, I picked risk assignment because I thought you could assign them to accepting the risk or transference of risk, right? So you could assign it to a different, but you're right, risk acceptance it is. And Christine is killing it today. Well done, Christine. All right, on to question 4. We got 2 more. Let's rock these out. Little blast from the past here for you. Which of the following is the most important ISC code of ethic canon? And I figured I'd bring this back because you know this is going to be part of the exam. Like no ifs, ands, or buts. A, act honorably, honestly, justly, responsibly, and legally. B, advance and protect the profession. I'm guessing cybersecurity profession there. C, right. Protect society, the Commonwealth, and the infrastructure. Or D, provide diligent and competent service to principals.
Okay, so, well let's wipe out D, right? Because it's not the most important, and that's why I'm wiping out first, right?
Okay.
Provide a diligent and competent service to principal. I don't think that's the most important. Advance and protect the profession. Probably not the most important. Now, as we know, who's the most important person that you're protecting security? People, right? So protect society, the Commonwealth, and the infrastructure. So I would go with C.
And looks like Christine said A.
A. Act honorably, honestly, justly, responsibly, and legally.
And Sean said C. So let's go ahead and flip this over. C is the correct answer. Protect society, the Commonwealth, and infrastructure. And I liked how you brought that back to the management perspective, right? Because as an analyst perspective or somebody who has access to a client's data, like acting honestly, justly, responsibly, and legally, like that's number one concern for me. But when you're thinking from a manager's perspective, you have to protect the society, protect the Commonwealth, and protect the infrastructure. So interesting stuff.
Yeah, and I think the one thing I want to remind people, remember when they say is you're protecting people, right? That's always just kind of keep that in mind was one of the most important things. So when you see protect society, the Commonwealth, kind of lays in the question, you can see how you can eliminate that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's kick off this last question. Here we go. Which of the following is not one of the 3 goals of integrity addressed by the Clark-Wilson model? So next Tuesday, we're going to go over these models, the Tuesday before Christmas. So this is kind of, let's see if you can get it, kind of question. A, prevention of the modification of information by unauthorized users. Prevention of the unauthorized or unintentional modification of information by authorized users. C, preservation of the internal and external consistency. Or D, prevention of the modification of information by authorized users. All right.
So you really have to know Clark Wilson, how he addresses that.
Well, but if you don't,
so if you don't, all right, we have to look at its modification of data. So now I would eliminate B, right? Prevention of unauthorized or intentional modification of information by authorized users. I'd probably remove that. Prevention of the internal and external consistency, right? It's in data integrity, right? So you're looking at the data being modified or changed. So B or C I would remove. Prevention of the modification of information by unauthorized users. So I'd be going between A and D, right? And then I'd probably say, because it's what is not one of the 3 goals, and they are not, prevention of modification of information by authorized users. So I would D, because you're trying to get unauthorized users, right? So that's what I would think.
Woo! Hold on, I think I got to clap one.
There we go.
Well done. Well done. It was D. Yeah, the prevention of the... And right, so you don't even have to know the code and you could get that right, because if you can just... The prevention of the modification of information by authorized users, like that doesn't quite make sense for what their goal should be, right? For a information system security model. So very well done. Looks like Sean got that right as well. Give you guys selves a round of applause. Congratulations on getting that. And Salome, welcome. I'm glad you could make it to the last little bit of that.
So Joel, here's a little kick. Here's a little kick for this.
Okay.
Prevention and modification of information by authorized users. That means they have access to the data to modify it.
Right.
Right. So that's the catch. Which of the following is not one of the 3 goals? Well, if they have access to the data to modify, that's not one of your goals for integrity. They're modifying it, right?
You're right.
They have access. They're supposed to be. If your accountant is accessing financial information, they're supposed to be accessing it. It's not a security. It's not integrity. They're doing their work. That's their job role. So that's how you can kind of say it's not. You want them to work. If they're not, then you're in trouble. Your company's in trouble.
Well done, though. And I think just getting in that mindset, like I don't have the way you break it down every week, like I need to get better at doing that. So just listening to you walk through those questions is beneficial for me. I don't know if it is for you guys, but feel free to give Brandon your feedback on how he does it. I think it's fantastic. And just hearing his mental process gets me in kind of the groove of the test taking side of things. So well done.
And I think that's important. If you can do that process of elimination and think that through, at least you'll come to 2 that are close or similar, that it's got to be one of these 2. And then it's wording. I found that as I've been doing tests, and as everyone has, it's normally a word you get caught up on. It's that one word that changes the whole question, changes the answer. And it's like, that's it. Well, what's not? Like in that example, what's not? Well, you want your authorized user to access data. Done. It's D.
Well, but even in each of those questions, like you may do it subconsciously, but I mean, you spoke to it there, but you grab that word and you go, that's the word that I need to be focused on when considering these answers. And that's key, right? Especially if you're doing AWS or this exam, like grab, is it high integrity, high availability, right? Something like that. That word is going to be really important to your answer, and keep that in mind when you go to answer it.
And this is the one I got caught up, and this is one for me when I was practicing, the not. Sometimes you're reading so quickly you miss this system is not one of the systems you'll use. And I'm looking like, oh my God, which is the system I'm going to use? I can't even use that one. It's got to be B because that's the one you're going to use. And then you get it wrong. You're like, what did I miss? Oh, it's not the one I want to use. Got it.
Spot on. And I do it too, right? I think I even did it in this one when I was reading it for you guys. Anyways. Good stuff, Brandon. Thank you. You got a thumbs up. Great job from Sean. Thumbs up from Salome. So thank you. Let's jump into this week's content now that we got Salome with us. Implement and manage engineering processes using secure design principles. You ready, Brandon?
Give me a second here. I'm coming up. Yep. Let's go.
Let's rock and roll. So security should be the consideration at every stage of a system's development. So if any of you guys are familiar with the SDLC or the software development lifecycle, they teach you to build security into your development. Now, they also teach this with DevOps. Sean had a comment. He hates the knots. I love it.
No, he hates the double ones. This is not a solution.
Those are the worst.
So it is a solution.
It isn't. Yeah.
Not is actually a double negative. So it actually is, right? So that's why I was saying with Sean saying that. That's what I got caught on. So with not, it actually is. So it's literally just saying is, but they're just confusing you.
So this is not the fire extinguisher used to put out electrical fires. Ready, go.
This is the fire extinguisher. Okay, so I am getting it. Okay, good.
All right. So SDLC, building security into it. Same with DevOps. If there's a question around what is the more secure way to develop a system is to develop it really well and then bolt on security, really good security, that's the wrong answer, right? It's about integrating it into your development lifecycle. So this following section is really going to discuss several security design principles that should be implemented and managed early on in the engineering process.
Exactly. So at the core of any development, control access request and who can touch your data is an utmost importance. For example, process A may, and I don't know if you got this picture, Joe. Did you grab that?
Yeah, I got it. So keep going real quick and I'm going to pull it up here in a sec.
Yeah. So for example, process A may ask for the data from process B. To satisfy the process A's request, process B must ask for data from process C. In the example that we're going to provide here, process B is the object of the first request and the subject of the second request. So as we show that, we'll go through that, and you can kind of see the arrows and how it kind of looks at the request and goes through.
You know what? I don't have this one pulled up. I wish there was a way to share like
a screen
image with, yeah. Let me see what I can do real quick. All right, keep going. So in regards to transitive trust, kind of talk through it, and I'll do my best to kind of get this pulled up real quick.
So this also serves as an example of transitive trust. Transitive trust is the concept that if A trusts B and B trusts C, then inherently A trusts C through the transitive properties. So do we get that? Does that all make sense to everyone?
I got it pulled up. Let me go ahead and share this out real quick. So this is one of the issues with cybersecurity, right? And when we talk about really sharing resources, this is like an inherent flaw because, I mean, let's take SolarWinds, for example, right?
Perfect.
Right, this is perfect. This is literally what's hitting the industry today, and that clients of mine, I was in an IT ISAC meeting today, and they're getting hit by it, and everybody's in incident response mode because we're seeing C2 communications from March, April, May, June, July in people's environments who are using SolarWinds, right? So what happened was domain A, in this picture, domain A is SolarWinds. Okay? They have an update server. And what happened is the hackers got in to their resources and they didn't get access to the source code. But what we believe happened is they were able to figure out a way to kind of bolt on that DLL file onto their update, right? So it's kind of an add-on to their source code. So then when the domain B is going to be the SolarWinds server that you purchased. And then domain C is going to be your security team, right? So what happened was domain B pulled down the update from domain A, right? Or SolarWinds. They pulled it down to their remote location or wherever it was. You know, your system admin pulled it down. He did a couple quick tests. Everything worked in the dev environment. So then he pushed that update to prod. Well, domain C, because domain B got that from domain A, there's some inherent trust there, right? Hey, we got it from a known resource. We've whitelisted SolarWinds. I've done it before. I've whitelisted SolarWinds traffic before. Now, the interesting thing was that what do you test in domain B? Are you testing just functionality with your other servers and processes and applications? Or are you testing that for security as well? Were you looking at if any C2 comms kicked off? Because the problem was the C2 comms were delayed.
Right.
So they didn't start right away. But this is an inherent issue in security, is because if A is trusted by B, that means that C is also trusting A. And that is transitive trust.
Right.
So hopefully that gave you a really good example of what transitive trust is, real world example, what's happening right now.
So let me ask everyone while we're going through this. Does that make sense to everyone? And then I want to understand, does that make sense of how you have to assess business relationships, technology relationships? Because I'm going to use another example if people want just one more. But from what I'm looking at on my side, one of the source defense was actually a company I worked for, and they were always talking about third-party developers. Now, are you familiar with this, Joe?
From third-party develop, I don't tell your story. I mean, I'm familiar with third-party developers.
So what happened was, if I develop you a website or an application, you trust that I develop in a secure manner, but you automatically trust my outsourced developers implicitly, this transit trust, that they wrote the code securely. But you didn't actually test their code. You only tested the company that developed the website. So if there's plugins, there's widgets, there's anything along that line, you did not actually assess the widgets and the plugins. You would just assess the code that was from the application or the website. So the transitive trust, and the challenge with that is, and this is what we're talking about here, is because I trust you as my marketing person, I did not assess or evaluate your third-party developers and what they did on their code and what happened. I trusted you that you gave me the right information. You did that. So, and this is what we're doing for security, updates, patching, manufacturers, all across the board. And it's so important as we're doing our scoping is looking at who managed that, who designed it, who is involved at all aspects. Because again, if you put it in your environment, if you don't know that deep of the relationship, you could be laying yourself vulnerable. So Source Defense was a company that we worked for, or it was a I was a value-added reseller, and we were doing that, and we would do scans, and the scans that we would come out with, you would see Amazon, you'd see this, and then also you see a third-party developer, and you'd be like, well, who's this? And they go, I don't know. I have no clue who that is. Well, they developed this code on your website that you're not familiar with, and then you can go, oh my God, and it's actually vulnerable. It's leaving like a backdoor or an open thing. So that's another thing of we're thinking about with updates and patching and all that. The transitive trust of, and we'll walk through this just quickly, is that if I trust the manufacturer, and I'm going to throw Symantec under the bus here, for example, if I trust Symantec and they're selling an endpoint, but my MSP is managing that, my transit trust could be Symantec because my MSP is looking after that. My MSP is looking at, so I'll trust them. Right. I'll trust them they have it set up. I trust they have it configured. I trust they've done all that, but they might not have it.
Well, and so here's what Sean said. He said, ideally, the full application pen testing should include third-party developers, just the same as you do your own apps. And like, so what
I agree with him.
I agree, but like it's difficult. So we've even gone to some of our third-party organizations, like, hey, show us your pen test report. They're like, right. What? Show us your most recent pen test report. Like,
right.
We went through and did an audit, and like, some of them couldn't. So it's interesting. So not just could they not show us their most recent pen test report, but like us sending our pen testers on site for them, like, would have been very difficult. Well, I agree it should be done though. And Vivek, welcome. Glad to see you on here.
But the thing is, what we're talking about is, as you guys are developing, being security experts, you have to think in this mindset and you have to ask those hard questions, right? Because you can't trust. And it's kind of one of the things that, as security guys, we're always kind of looking at risk and vulnerability, where you can't trust that it's been done, that everything is secure. You have to actually do your due diligence.
Yeah. Sean said it's challenging and super expensive. Yeah, it really is. Now let me give one more example for transient trust and how you could use it to bypass the security control. Is that fair?
Sure. Go ahead.
So Brandon, I am your security team, and I see you spend a lot of time on YouTube. Like a lot of time on YouTube.
Okay, hold on a second. First, you've breached my security because you're what you're stalking. But okay, I'm watching a lot of YouTube.
Okay, you're on YouTube. I block it. you can no longer get to YouTube.
Right.
So what I do is I go to you go to a VPN service, right?
Right.
And that VPN service has access to YouTube.
Yep.
So it's trusted to YouTube.
Right.
So if you can get to the VPN service and the VPN service can get to YouTube, well, then you've just bypassed those security controls through transient trust.
Mm-hmm.
So cool. That's another example. I said transient. Transitive trust. YouTube's listening to music. You know what? It can be, but there's also some interesting stuff on YouTube that we've got our users looking at.
Oh, there's everything. There's everything. There's everything out on the internet.
All right. Well, let's talk about everything's out there. All right. Let's talk about closed and open systems. Also, before I do this, Vivek, you mentioned you had your certificate to take the CISSP exam. Tell the group when you're planning on taking it. Also, you said something about May when I was messaging you back and forth. Does that mean you have to wait until May to schedule it? I want to hear it. Leave it in the chat. Tell everybody what your plans are. All right. Let's talk about closed and open systems. Now, this is not talking about open source software or closed source code. We're talking about closed and open systems. Now, systems, these are the two philosophy for building systems. A closed system is designed to work well with a narrow range of other systems, generally all from the same manufacturer. The standards for closed systems are proprietary and not normally disclosed, right? So this is...
So Joe, give us an example one.
Yeah, so this is, let's for instance say you have a bottling plant.
Mm-hmm.
God, this is really left field, but bottling plant. So you're working with the metal, the controls. You have a few operating systems in place that are potentially OT, right, on off. It's either running or it's not. But you need something to communicate with other parts of your operation. So you custom design a piece of software to facilitate that communication. That would be a closed system. You build it to communicate with a couple systems, nothing else, right? You're not using external libraries. You're not using other standards. You're building it for a specific purpose. That's a closed system.
So a lot of the times you'll see these closed systems in manufacturing. That's why I was wondering about your example. I mean, the one I've seen, because my father-in-law is in an electric or civil engineers, or I think, no, he's the electrical engineer. Anyways, he used to work in manufacturing, and they used to code specifically for the manufacturing assembly line or packaging line or whatever that may be that he's working on. That code would be specific to the assembly line. So it would be in a closed system that it would cut off, time of packaging and so forth, which is milliseconds, but that code would only be in that environment.
Absolutely, right. And so in many cases, attacking these closed systems, Brandon, it's going to be a lot harder than attacking an open system, right? So software and hardware components with known vulnerabilities, they may not exist on the closed system, right? You can't just showdan it and find these vulnerabilities because it's very custom software or hardware. And it would take a lot of in-depth knowledge in order to target these systems.
Yeah, then Sean just saying he agrees that many manufacturer systems perform these functions, SCADA, and then Vivek is saying gotcha.
Yeah, he also said he's looking to take the CISSP super soon. He's already got the voucher. Buddy, but you missed our pop quiz at the beginning of this, so you're failing me. You got to be here on time. I know you're in Austin. But you better be,
He's got to put in his calendar, right?
That's it. But hey, I'm using Knowledge Hut. I'll send you the link. Let me grab it real quick. Brandon, kick on with open systems real quick.
Sure.
And then I'll grab that for him.
Open systems, on the other hand, are designed using agreed upon industry standards. Open systems are as much easier to integrate with the systems from different manufacturers that support the same standards. Open systems are generally far easier to integrate with other open systems. It is easy, for example, to create a local area network with a Microsoft Windows Server machine, a Linux machine, and a Macintosh machine. Although all three computers use different operating systems and could represent up to three different hardware architectures, each supports industry standards and makes it easy for the networked communication to occur.
Right.
So very easy, right?
Think Red Hat. Think VM, right? So something that's integrated, that's made to communicate back and forth, that has public libraries, that supports different operating systems. These are open designs, open systems. All right. So those are open and closed systems. Those are two philosophies when you're going to build a piece of software or hardware. Now let's talk open source, closed source. and how it will be referenced for this exam, right? So open source solution is where the source code or other internal logic is exposed to the public. Closed source is where one where the source code or other internal logic is hidden from the public.
Right. So then open source solutions often depend on public inspection and review to improve the product over time. Closed source solutions are more dependent on the vendor programmer to revise the product over time. Both open source and closed source solutions can be available for sale or at no charge, but the term commercial typically implies closed source.
Yeah, so that's the kicker, guys. So if you hear them use the word commercial, they're talking about closed source, not open source, right? So there will be no public review of a commercialized product, right? That's closed source. Now,
so
go ahead.
Let's talk about what's an example of a commercial. What would be one example?
So let's take an example of one that used to be open source and is now closed source. Metasploit.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say Metasploit used to be open source. Agile. Yeah, so Metasploit was, I want to say it was open source while he was developing it, but then Rapid7 bought it, right? So they bought it. I think they still have the open source free edition, but then they've also basically friggin' weaponized the thing and have a premium closed source version of Metasploit. So good stuff there. Red Hat. Is Red Hat closed source now? Red Hat server is, right? Do they have a premium version?
Mm-hmm.
Is it all open source though? Do you know? I know. I'm struggling because companies are doing this freemium version thing where they have an open source version, but then where they pay their developers is on their closed source edition. But it sounds like you guys have the grasp of it, so we're not going to dwell here too long. We want to get this content covered for you guys. So next up is techniques for ensuring confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Brandon, did you want to touch on something before I moved on?
No, let's keep going.
Okay, cool. Red Hat bought by Sun, the support for Red Hat, that was it. Red Hat charges an arm and a leg for support. So if you want any support whatsoever, that's where they rake in the buku bucks. All right. So for ensuring your CIA triad, right, to guarantee confidentiality, integrity, and availability of your data, you have to ensure that all the components that have access to your data are secure and well-behaved, right? So what has access to the data? You have to be able to understand which channels, which applications are able to gain access to that. Software designers use different techniques to ensure that programs do only what's required and nothing more, similar to least privilege for humans, but for applications.
Right. And suppose a program writes to and reads from an area of memory that is being used by another program. The first program could potentially violate all three security tenets: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. If an affected program processes sensitive or secret data, the data's confidentiality is no longer guaranteed. If the data is overwritten or altered in an unexpected way, a common problem when multiple readers and writers inadvertently access the same shared data, there is no guarantee of integrity. So now let me ask you this. Now we're looking at cloud solutions like I'll use Google G Suite. Mm-hmm. Now, when people are now editing, I mean, you have to look at the history, but that data that's in a sheet or anything along that line, there could be compromise of integrity because so many people can have access to it to modify it. Now, don't get me wrong, there's history, you're going to go through it, but quickly enough, something could be deleted and you're not really paying attention.
Well, so you said cloud services, and I want to talk to that. So you have things that are serverless. Is that what you're referring to? So
I'm just using right now, like say our document right now that, we kind of work off together. I might delete something and then you now go, where did that go? And now it's gone for that short period of time. Don't get me wrong. Like I said, you can do the history and look at it and kind of recall it. But in that moment, you're losing that data integrity because I can change it and you can change it at the same time. And I'm just using that as an example.
Yeah. And so Vivek said, you're right. That is why GitHub has a thing called branching, right? So they've addressed that. I think so the statement you said in here was, if a program writes and reads from an area that is being used by another program, and this is why what AWS has done is they've created VPCs, which can separate that. So if you're running Lambda functions that's serverless, it's basically reaching out, grabbing resources from a data center and running it, but it's dedicating that processing power to you. So it's not writing it to memory for another program that's going to use those same resources later when another Lambda function is invoked, right? So I think that's key, right? Is if you're not confining, if you're not bounding, and if you're not isolating certain processes, especially that's what sandboxing is, right? You want to make sure none of that data leaves that sandbox, because if it leaves that sandbox, the integrity's gone.
For sure.
So there's three concepts that make designing secure programs and operating systems more difficult, but they also make it possible to implement more secure systems. And I just mentioned them. It's confinement, it's creating bounds, and it's isolation. So remember those three things: confinement, bounds, and isolation. And let's jump right into confinement, Brandon.
Yeah. Software designers use process confinement to restrict the actions of a program. Simply put, process confinement allows a process to read from and write to only a certain memory location and resources. This is also known as sandboxing, which you just mentioned, right?
So confinement, sandboxing, right? So because one of them is isolation. And for me, I know I'm going to struggle with that if it comes to the exam and they mention isolation and sandboxing. Confinement is sandboxing. So the way I remember it, Brandon, is if you're trying to confine something, you're trying to keep it where it's supposed to go. If you're isolating, you're completely pulling it apart and making sure it can't talk to anybody else. Gosh, they're so similar though. Anyway, sorry I interrupted.
So think of a physical sandbox.
Yep.
Think of it in that way.
It's confined, right? All the sand is confined into one place.
You have your kids on there, they're playing on there, they're just on that sandbox in that player, and that's where they're isolated or they're confined to play on that area. Right?
If you're isolating, they're on timeout.
They're a timeout. They're off the sandbox.
You're isolated.
They're sitting on the bench, right? They can't go play.
I love it.
If you visualize that, you're going to do the test. You're going to laugh. Trust me. You're going to sit there and think, Joel and Brandon talking about playing in the sandbox, right? And sand.
Putting their kids on timeout.
But the funny thing is when you do that, you're going to be like, I get it. That's a confinement space. That's where they're playing. I get it. Right. So I'll remind you that.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, I was going to jump in. So Vivek said, interesting, similar to VMs. You're absolutely right. So now this basically operating systems or some other security component is going to disallow the read-write requests, right? So if a process attempts to initiate an action that's beyond its authority, that's beyond its sandbox, that action will be denied. So like think of your sandbox having like force field walls, right? So if you try to throw sand outside, it's just going to stop right there. That's confinement, right? And if it exceeds that, your security controls should be able to then isolate it. Vivek's laughing at us too. So, in addition, further actions should happen. Like if there's a violation attempt, it should be logged, right? Those should be documented. They should be stored in the system logs. Now, systems that must comply with higher security ratings, they usually record all violations and then they respond as well, right? So typically the offending process will be terminated, right? So if an app is compromised and it tries to escape the sandbox, boom, it'll terminate that process.
Right. And then you got confinement can be implemented in the operating system itself, such as through process isolation and memory protection, through the use of confinement application of services, for example, Sandboxy at sandboxy.com, or through a virtualization hyperversion solution such as VMware or Oracle VirtualBox.
Yep, absolutely. So Vivek is right on. He's also talking about coding malloc and calloc in C programming. Absolutely. It's always interesting getting those, especially in a pen test report and having to explain those to people. It's always a good time.
Like what? What are you talking about?
They don't understand it, but very similar. I mean, now that we've gone through this is exactly how I'm going to explain it to them.
Awesome. So each process that runs on a system is assigned an authority level. The authority level tells the operating system what the process can do. In simple systems, there may be only two authority levels, user and kernel. The authority levels tells the operating system how to set the bounds for a process.
So we've moved on to bounds now. So first was confinement, then it's bounds, then it's isolation. So the bounds are, if something's running on a system, it has an assigned authority level, user or kernel, right? So if you see user or kernel, question's most likely going to be bounds, right? Because based on the authority levels you have, those are the permissions basically you're going to be given. Now, the bounds of a process,
go ahead. Who's going to be given that permission?
Either the user or the kernel.
So
yep.
So it's the process, right? Each process that runs in the system is assigned an authority level. So that's very key there. Yep. It's the process that is assigned the user or the kernel authorization there.
Right. So you set bounds on certain processes, right? Similar to like what you would do in AWS with API calls, right? You would set bounds on certain API calls, either allow or deny those based on the role you have, either user or kernel. And you would set limits on the memory addresses and the resources that then it could access. So the bounds state the area within which a process is confined or contained. In most systems, these bounds segment logical areas of memory for each process to use. It's the responsible of the operating system to then enforce the logical bounds and to disallow access to other processes.
Now, before we go to isolation, confinement is related to or equal to?
Sandboxing.
There we go. So because I bring that up because the next thing we're talking about is isolation, right? When a process is confined through enforcing access bounds, the process runs in isolation. Process isolation ensures that any behavior will affect only the memory and resources associated with the isolated process. Isolation used to protect the operating environment, the kernel of the operating system, OS, and other independent application. Isolation is an essential component of a stable operating system.
So basically, you're putting that process on timeout.
Yeah, you're grounding it. It's out of the soundbox, sitting on the bench, and it can't play.
And it can spin its wheels, right?
Yep. You can sit there and kick its feet on the bench, but
and you log everything, but it's isolated, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and so the operating system could provide like intermediary services such as cut and paste and resource sharing, right? So, hold on. Isolation is what prevents an application from accessing the memory or resources of another application, whether for good or for ill. Yep. So isolation is timeout. Bounds is based on user or kernel level process authorities. And then you have your sandbox.
Exactly. Cool. And then now, Sean says essentially you are attempting to eliminate buffer overflow errors, which can lead to injection attacks and other exploits.
Spot on. Absolutely. That is
awesome.
Now, before we move on, I had a couple memes for everybody I forgot to share.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can we break it up a little? So
let's break it up.
All right,
so first, hold on.
Yep, go ahead.
How's everyone liking the information? What do you guys think so far? You guys getting this? Does it make sense?
I mean, this is great exam fodder. Like if I was writing an exam, and I'm not sure if I told you this, I used to write exams for SANS. So I used to write exam questions for them. But this is like perfect fodder to use for an exam writer. So guarantee you there's questions on it. But yeah, would love to hear it. You guys like this content? Is it good? And got some claps already. So let's jump in for some memes. Guys, it's almost Christmas. It's December. So here's my memes for you. The days in winter be like, it's daytime at 5:59, and then at 6 p.m., it is pitch black outside. Does that drive anybody else crazy? Also, then next to it, what is an extreme sport? And driving before your windshield defrosts when you're late. Brandon, you live in Canada. You have done this more than once, right?
Oh, I'm sure. There's no doubt about it. Yeah, most definitely. We've done that. Got your little scraper just so you can see.
Oh, that's it. No, so I got to tell a story. So my first car was a $2,000 1979 Camaro, and I put a really big engine in it. The thing was rusting apart, but my engine was brand new. I had a killer exhaust and header system, so it sounded ridiculously loud. But in order to fit that engine in there, I had to pull my heater out.
Oh my God.
It was perfect in the summertime. It was great. You didn't need it. AC worked fine. Wintertime rolled around, and I'm driving this monster with the window down and my head out the window in order to see.
That's awesome.
That was my commute to work every day in Colorado, mind you. All right.
Okay, so
don't do that. It is an extreme sport.
I had an old Mustang, and the heater broke in it. So, and I was 16, 17 years old, couldn't afford to, repair it. So what I did in winter was the big ski mitts, big jacket, got the toque on, everything, and you're driving there just trying to stay warm.
Been there. Vivek, I got some laughs. Cool. As long as we keep you guys awake here today. Vivek said, has anyone used Beautiful Soup library in Python? Who came up with that name? Yeah, that is a goofy name. But yeah, so what I always recommend people getting into Python is Codecademy. It's $20 a month for their premium version, and you can get into data science and data manipulation with Python, and they jump into the Beautiful Soup library pretty quick. So it's good stuff. If you haven't used that, I recommend it.
Well, the one thing I found with Codecademy, I'm going to add that it's good if you're because they walk you through and they give you some, but always have another resource. Because I was doing a little bit of Codecademy before, just learning Python programming, and I always found like I didn't know enough theory. Right, so I kind of complement that with other books.
Said nobody ever.
How dare you?
You need more theory? No, hands-on. Get in the weeds. Write some code.
I for my mind, I need to know how, what I'm learning, because if someone says, and this is where kind of mine is, if you have to explain it to someone, I wanted to know about, you look at the different variables, you're looking at if statements and why am I using that, how it would work. I want to kind of know a little bit of the weeds so that when I can explain it, then I know it. If I can't, then I'm like, I did something, it does this, and you click on it and you hit run and it
goes.
It runs. And then you put something in, and then they ask you another question. I get it, but how does it work? I don't know. I just followed what they told me to do.
Different learning styles, man. I can appreciate it. I don't agree with it. But everybody's got a different learning style. Find what's right for you. Vivek, I thought you'd be on my side, man. You
gotta know it. You gotta know it.
Those are killing me. All right, I got one last meme for you guys. So as you guys know, we probably are going on a second lockdown here real soon with COVID. So I went to the store to stock up, and my wife said that I may prepare for the apocalypse differently than the majority of America. I think she might be right.
Paper, no, like lots of toilet paper.
I got one thing of toilet paper because I don't think we need to stock up on toilet paper again. But I may be a little addicted to bubbly. So anyways, that was the back of my car. So if you're not consuming enough bubbles, I highly recommend it. The bubblies rock. Oh my
God. That's awesome. At least I know where to go if I want some bubbly.
That's right. I got enough for the whole lockdown, guys. You're welcome. All right. Cool. Good stuff. So you ready to hop into the next set?
Yeah, let's do it. And then we just got Don. Nice to meet you, Don. Thanks for coming out. Of course, you have to have a plan for a big plan. If you're just doing a routine, then just code it, right? So.
Yep, that's it. And the training. Yeah. Well, hey, I got a 4-year-old, Sean, and there are accidents that happen. Okay, so the training pants are also a requirement during lockdown. And welcome, Don. Absolutely. Yeah, if it's a routine, if it's something that's repetitive that you do every single day, script it out. Write a bash script, Google that thing. Chances are somebody else has written something you can copy, paste, customize, and run on a regular basis.
Well, I mean, you're in Python, and correct me if I'm wrong, you just write out the code and you have like and I'm gonna bastardize this because I haven't done it in a while, but you write some sort of a variable to. Was a variable, isn't it?
You could do a cron job with a bash script, or you could write a variable. Yep.
Yeah, right. And then you just call that variable in, and then it runs that sequence of code, right?
Yep, absolutely. Looks like Don passed his Security Plus exam on Sunday. Give him a round of applause, everybody. Hold on, I got my claps for you, Don.
Congratulations.
Pumped, man. That's a big one. So if you guys don't know that the DoD 8570, the Security Plus gets you IAT level 3 certified. So for the technical side of things, it gets you all the way up to level 3. Now for DoD 8570, the CISSP gets you IAM, or the management side of things, all the way up to level 3. And that's why we're studying here today. So Don, congratulations once again. And
that's awesome
for joining us.
Keep it up.
Absolutely. Cool. So guys, we got to hop into controls. We are running low. We got about 11 minutes left. So
we'll get it.
We'll get it. Controls. So we have mandatory and discretionary access controls. And I still I used to get these confused. But now that I've been doing AWS stuff for a while, it all makes a lot more sense. Mm-hmm. So these are called MAC and DAC. And I got a quick picture for you because it just makes it easier if you can see it. So I'm going to fade this in real quick. Mm-hmm. Mandatory and discretionary access controls. Mandatory access control are decisions about access that must be beyond the control of the user. So a central authority handles these decisions. Think Active Directory. Think roles and permissions on AWS, right? These are controls that the user doesn't have any authority to change. That is mandatory. So think about a mandatory lockdown. You don't control it. It's the politicians, it's the mayor, the governor. You can tell how much I pay attention to that stuff. I don't know who it is, but it's mandatory. You have to do it, right? So mandatory access controls are things that is beyond your control. Now, when we get to discretionary access control, this leaves a certain amount of control authority to the user. Think Unix file sharing permissions, where you can chmod and change the permissions on your file. So hope that helps in regards to MAC, which is mandatory access controls, and DAC, which is discretionary access controls.
Right. So with mandatory control, static attributes of the subject and the object are considered to determine the permissibility of an access. Each subject possesses attributes that define its clearance of authority to access resources.
Yeah. And the easiest way I think of this now, it's literally grained into my head, is when you're literally writing out like permissions in AWS, right? You have a JSON file that basically tells you the resource, is it allow or deny? And then you list your API calls, right? And you're basically putting that, and then you connect it to a role, and then it's enabled on resources. So you can literally define those. It's mandatory. It's set in stone. It's in your JSON file. There's no changing it. That's mandatory access controls. I'm going to mind if I catch up on the comments real quick. All right, so we got congrats. Yep, lots of congrats, Don. That's really exciting. Don says he's going for the CISM next and then continues studying for the CISSP. And then Don also said, I missed the questions on practice exams. Thanks for explaining it. Easy to understand the way you said it. Awesome. Now, Don, I would love to hear were there questions that you got hung up on Security Plus? Because I also have heard that Security Plus, there are aspects to it that overlap with CISSP. So I would love to hear your feedback. What were things that were easy? What were a few things that really you got hung up on for your Security Plus exam? Love to hear if you can do it in the next few minutes. All right. Discretionary access controls, they differ. They have some ability to define the objects to access within limits. Discretionary access controls allow the subject to define a list of objects to access as needed. You did a good example earlier, Brandon, of the Google Doc, right? So if you have a Google Doc, you can get in there and you can click share, and you can type somebody's email and click share, or you can also click the link, copy it, and paste it elsewhere. That's going to be DAC or discretionary access control. Absolutely. Don says ACL, so access control lists. Yep, absolutely, especially network access control lists. Those are going to be mandatory though, right? So if you have a network access control list, that's something that you've permitted certain ports to be in use to certain IP addresses, and it is mandatory, right? So the end user does not have visibility or access to changing those permissions. Well, you can figure out pretty quick by doing a scan what the rules are, but you can't change them, right?
Right. Perfect. So both mandatory and discretionary access control limits the access to objects by subject. The primary goal of controls is to ensure the confidentiality, integrity of data by disallowing unauthorized access by authorized or unauthorized subjects.
Yep, absolutely. And that drops us right into trust and assurance.
So 6.0 cryptography and PKI kicked this butt. So all this is what we've been covering, right?
So Don, just curious, did you catch our sessions when we were doing cryptography and PKI the last 3-4 weeks? I'm curious if you hopped in, and if you did, if it helped. And if you didn't, where were you the last few Tuesdays? All right.
So you had a tough time, all the protocols.
Yeah. There's a lot to cover, right? We spent 4 weeks. I think we spent a whole month on cryptography, didn't we, Brandon?
I think so, yeah. We just finished it last week.
Yeah, and we're going to probably have to do a circle back on it towards the end when people start to take the exam. So
there's a lot to cover.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Don said it helped. Awesome. Glad you made some of it. Okay. Trust and assurance. A trusted system is one which protects the protection mechanisms work together to process sensitive data for many types of users while maintaining a stable and secure computing environment. Assurance is simply defined as the degree of confidence in the satisfaction of the security that it has. So assurance gives you peace of mind, think about resting assured that it's protected.
Right. And insurance must be continually maintained, updated, and revived. This is true if its trusted system experience as no a known change of a significant amount of time has passed. In either case, change has occurred at some level. Change is often the antithesis of the security. It is often diminished security. So whenever change occurs, the systems needs to reevaluate it to verify the level of security it provides previously to still intact. So again, it's reevaluating. If you made a modification or a change to the system, you want to make sure that you for assurance that you actually now validate that it's there, that now you feel confident in that.
Yeah. Oh, and that's the kicker, right? So if you're thinking assurance and, you're going to have to retest this often, that's what your annual pen test is for, right? I mean, even if it's just time that passes, even if no change has been done to your system or software, you still need to get reassessed because things change with time.
So now we're going to ask, did help, do we have replays? Yeah, I think on your profile, you can go back and rewatch it. Correct, Joel?
You can watch it on there. I was also grabbing you real quick, Don. When we stream these, we actually stream them to YouTube at the same time. Let me see if I can paste this in here real quick for you.
And then Sean's asking, how long do you think this study group will last? Joel and I have actually had that conversation. We're going to go through this until we actually write and pass the CISSP, and then we're going to work on the next thing. So we're going to keep this going.
Well, so I think what we're going to, I may try to do a exam attempt with Vivek here in the next few weeks to month. But we're still going to continue on. So even if I pass it, we're going to go through all of the content. Mm-hmm. We're going to hit it all. It'll all be on YouTube. You guys can review it anytime. You can skip past us jib-jabbing and the memes if you want, but get the content out of it, right? Come back and review them, get the pictures, get the resources, and hopefully at the end of this, we'll do a really good recap where we'll run through basically all of the exam prep stuff that's in the book. We'll just do a crash course on all of it. So hopefully we'll get a couple really good ones for you then as well.
All right, so we got 3 more minutes.
And we got this. So the next part is understanding the fundamental concepts of security models. So we're not going to go into the security models today. And the reason why is here are all the security models we have to go over. So if you think we can cover all of those today, you're mistaken. But we are going to hit these in the next few sessions. So you can tell there's a bunch of them. We're not going to hit those today. What we are going to talk about real quick is what they are. So a security model provides a way for designers to map abstract statements into security policy, right? So if your product team says, here's your PRD, you have to be able to do this, and this set of functionality in order to make the product we want. You take those statements and then you build security policy around. Well, if this is a requirement, then we have to build security around the data coming in here, the data leaving here, the data being stored here.
True. And then thus the security model gives software designers something against which to measure their design and implementation. The model of the course must support each part of the security policy, in which way the developer can be sure their security implementation supports the security policy. So what's one framework that they code against? Do you know, Joel?
Sorry, I was responding to Don. What's the question?
What's one framework that a lot of coders use to code against, to make sure they have secure code?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know what you're thinking.
OWASP?
OWASP? Yeah, OWASP is
it's a framework.
It is a security framework. You're right.
Right, that they use to design, right? Thus, a security model gives software designers something against which to measure their design implementation. So OWASP drives out that framework that these guys code against, right? To make sure when they're done, their code, their application is somewhat secure.
I'm thinking of all our developers and gosh, I doubt any of them have clicked on the OWASP security knowledge framework in the past month or two.
So they're doing a great job, Joel. What are you talking about? They probably look at it all the time.
No, but I mean, we've built into, we use DevOps. We have security guys who do it, but it's like, man, we gotta get these guys working and building in the security. We have.
I was trying to help them so they're not thrown under the bus. They're watching this going, Joel, what are you telling me? No, of course we do that.
Not that specific framework is what I meant. We have all kinds of frameworks and security tools we use to check our code and ensure, AWS has a set of tools as well. So it's interesting to see. But yeah, we got to get this ingrained into the security and development teams' heads that We have to continue to build security into the process. All right. I say we call it there, Brandon. What do you think?
I think it's been a good night. I think we covered a lot of great information. Again, thank you so much, everyone, for coming out and kind of listening to us and going through this journey with us. I think we're learning a lot. I know, what do we got? Christmas is next week, right?
Yeah.
Holidays.
Yep.
So we're on for next week, correct, Joel?
We're on for next week. We're going to start covering those security models. I don't want to put us a week behind. If you can't make it, guys, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, whatever religion you guys are or holiday you're celebrating. I hope you guys are safe and you travel or don't travel. And just do so safely. So
travel, don't travel, whatever you do, just do that.
That's right. So guys, thank you for joining us once again. We appreciate you guys. Sean, once again, we're going to cover all of the CISSP content every single Tuesday. I will try not to miss it. And we'll be here until we get you guys to pass this exam. So thanks, guys. Have a great rest of your week.
Awesome. Have a good night, guys.